welcome to another Liquid Bullet Productionz. With us today is martial art legend, Mr. Peter Dennis. Thanks for coming, Peter. How are you today?
I'm good, nervous, but, we'll get there. This is worse than competition.
Right, I've just got a list of your achievements in front of me, Peter. I'm just going to read them through. So, 1971, BKK Team Champion and Individual Champion. 1972, BKK Team Champion. 1973, Mayflower Championships Team Champion. 1974, Mayflower Championships Black Belt Tournament, second place. 1974, BKA Summer Individual Champion. 1974, BKA Southern Area Individual and Team Champion. 1974, BKA 5th Essex Games Individual and Team Champion. 74 again, Essex Sports Personality of the Year. 74, BKA Southern Area Senior and Team Champion. 1975, BKA Southern Area Individual Champion. 75 again, Scotland versus England versus USA, Team Champion. 75, European Championships Team Member Champion. 75, BKA Individual Team and Individual and Team Champion. 75, BKC All Stars Team Champion. 1976, year I was born.
Liar.
Cup de Nice International Team Champion. Was that French, that one?
Yeah, funny enough, in the open air, it was the first open air stadium I've ever fought in. So it was really good.
England versus Netherlands versus Wales Championship Team runner-up. 1976, European Championship Team Champion and Individual. 1976, South African Triangle Championships Team Champions. 76, Budokan versus Ishimu Team Champion. 76, BKA SA Team Champion. 1977, the 4th World Championships Great Britain Team Member in Tokyo. 1977, West Germany versus Norway versus Great Britain Championships Team Champion. Grand Prix Championship Team Champion. 98, the IKF Irish Open Champion. 1978, the European Championships Team Member and Team Runners-Up. In 1979, EKF International Second Place. In 79, the BKA Teams Champion. 1980, Italy versus England Team Manager. 1980, European Championships Squad Member. 1981, Finnish Open Team Third. 1984, Jersey Open Championships Individual Champion. 1984, JAKA Team Champion. 1984, Jersey and CI Championships Individual and Team Champion. In 95, Jersey Team Manager, Coach Commonwealth Games, third place. 1986, Portuguese Open, Individual and Team Champion. 88 to 89, England Under-21s Team Coach. That's quite a list there, Peter. Quite an achievement list there.
That was compiled by me going through all my trophies and writing off from the trophies what I'd done. I'd never remember them all anyway.
So Peter, before we get into this, can we just roll back right away to the beginning, to where it began for you and where you grew up, etc.?
Sure. My roots are out of London, Mile End, into Dagenham, where from Dagenham, I was, let's think, about 11 when we moved down to Basildon in Essex.
Yeah.
In Basildon in Essex it was a new town at that stage, and so everybody was feeling their feet. There was no things, there was no boxing, there was no football, there was no karate, anything of that nature. So unfortunately, I started to run with a crowd at that stage, and done some things that I'm not too proud of nowadays. But as a child, you don't think about them things.
Yeah.
My road into karate started with a guy come to me out the blue. I was about 17 years of age, and I worked with him. I was driving at the time, And he said, there's a karate club starting in Langdon, which is a little town just outside of Basildon. Do I want to go? And I said, no, I had no intentions of going. And he said, please come along. I really want to try. So I went along to give him support. And I honestly had no sort of reason to want to start or anything like that. You know, my life was revolved around gang warfare, really, at that stage, you know. And I walked in, it was Dickie Woo and Timmy Francis. Dickie Woo was a first cue, Timmy Francis was a second cue, blue belt. And we walked into this dirty old hall, and there was about 5 people in there training. And I was, the bloke that I was with, his name Barry Chick, funny enough, but, well, not funny, but I remember that, and I don't normally remember names. So Barry Chick, he was all enthusiastic. Oh, I want to start. And Timmy Francis come up and said, you may as well start then. And I said, no, I don't want to start. It's okay, I've only come to give him support. So, just, you know, as you do, I was more embarrassed sitting out than I was starting. So I sort of, I had jeans on and a T-shirt, and they were showing us a Maya Gary, and I can remember Timmy Francis, and it was basically bullshit, but he was going, oh, you've got a great foot here, and it's going to be a great Maya Gary that you do. Not that I knew what a Maya Gary was at that stage, you know, but I sort of listened to him, and oh, yeah, okay. And anyway, by the end of the session, they were walking up and down his Ingwitsubachi, and I was looking at it and thinking, I could never do that. I would never be able to do that. Even if I wanted to, I'd never be able to do that. So anyway, we come out, and Barry was, you know, full of enthusiasm, full of, oh, come on, let's go back. And I'll give it another go. And then, so it was on the Tuesday and Thursday. So I went back on the Thursday, and I got fully immersed. I couldn't tell you what I'd done on that Thursday, but I know I come out of that class with my head spinning. I think I'd learned how to close a fist. You know, that was something as stupid as that, you know, close a fist. And they'd done a lot of sanchin, and I think I'd learned how, or what I thought was a sanchin Dutchy stance then. And Barry Chick's face was, you know, his chin was on the floor. He lasted 3 weeks. And for my troubles, I've lasted 54 years, you know. So
you just stayed on from that first beginning.
I never looked back from that. It just mesmerised me, just absolutely mesmerised me. I didn't know anything about karate. I'd never read anything about karate. Clubs were few and far between. And it just, from that second day on, I just, you know, I was hypnotised.
I suppose the movies then as well. I mean, Bruce Lee didn't sort of come about till about 76. Did he ran that?
No, there's Bruce Lee. There was no mention of Bruce Lee or anything like that. You know, once I started to get into reading martial arts books, the only one I ever wrote was a guy called John Cull, I think his name was, Khul. He was an American. He used to wear the shortest gi you've ever seen. If you see pictures of him now, or what the pictures I see then, of him doing karate, you would laugh and think it was a cartoon. But at that stage, I was looking for anything, you know. And I was reading in fact, I nicked the Masoyama book. I didn't even buy it. I had to nick it. I didn't have the money to buy it, so I had to go down to whether it was Smith's or wherever, and I nicked the book and done a runner with it, you know. And read that religiously, you know. And I look at it now, and it is, you know, it isn't intuitive. It's a good book, but it isn't anything, you know. It's a con, really. But it you know, it sold me. I just, you know, from there I was just enthralled.
So what was that first style of karate you started with, Peter?
It was Kyokushin Kai. They were out of Stratford Dojo. Yeah, it was Steve O'Neill. They were out of Stratford Dojo, Dickie and Timmy. As I say, they were low grades anyway. They must have just been wanting to start a club. I didn't know the in-depth, you know, politics or anything at that time. But every time they come down the club, they would talk about this guy, Tiki Donovan. And I think Tiki had just come across from Wado, Shogakan. I think he was at a loose end and lived near Stratford and went to Stratford to train, and they were talking about him. So I had this this name in my head for about, I suppose, about 2 years before I actually met him. May have been 2 years, but I'd heard about him, and so I read up on him, and I'd seen pictures of him and things like that, But bearing in mind, he was probably, first Dan at that stage, and I'd never met him, and I didn't realise that my life would, be run parallel with him, So
yeah. So just going back to the Kyokushin Kai, so that is like the knockout fight they do, isn't it? Like the full contact.
Yeah, it isn't as intense as the knockout fighting nowadays, but it was, it was full contact. Kyokushin Kai was always full contact, and you were taught, funny enough, if you're losing, knock them out. That's what that was the creed. If you're going to lose this competition, knock them out. So I was doing that for about 2 or 3 years before, I actually realised that competition karate wasn't about that.
Yeah. So where did your karate life go? So you first started with the Kyokushin Kai. So how many grades did you do through them, and how did that go?
Okay. Yeah. I once so. It really started from what happened then was that because they were travelling down to Basildon from Mile End, it was quite a long way, and then they started to peter off a little bit. A few of us trained on our own, and then the club sort of broke up a little bit. And again, you're not involved in the politics, so you don't quite know what's going on. You're a low grade, and you're not privy to that information. And so we were just wandering about with no club at some stage. Funny enough, I was on Stratford Station. I suppose this was about 2 years after I'd started. I was on Stratford Station, and as I say, I'd seen these books with pictures of Ticky, and all of a sudden I'm looking at this guy, and it's Ticky Donovan. He's delivering newspapers. And I was like, it was like seeing Muhammad Ali or, any film star that you appreciated in the years, and I thought, what should I do? And, I'm 18 years of age. I don't know what to do. I don't know whether to go up and say hello and he's going to go, piss off or what. You don't know what's going to happen. So he's got the papers, and I walked up and I said, as you do, silly ourselves. I said, "You're Ticky Donovan." And he said, "Yeah, obviously it was Ticky Donovan, wasn't he? But, you say stupid things." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, I've been training with Dickie Wu and Timmy Francis, and their clubs broke up. He said, "Well, funny enough, I'm opening a club at Parkin and Dagenham. I've just opened this club." I said, "Would it be possible to come down and train?" And he said, "If you can get down to there from there, yeah, of course you're welcome to come down and train." And that was the start of my journey, really. I went down to Barking, Dagenham, where bloody hell was it? Woodbridge, is it? The first one
Woodbridge,
we had. Yeah, Woodbridge. And it was a little old judo hall. That was even before the Nissan huts. So, do you remember the Nissan huts? The damn Nissan huts? I'll come to them anyway. And it was a little old judo hall. There was about 6 of us in there. Dougie Carroll was one of them. I don't know anybody else who's come through on it. Anyway, so I trained with him, and it was so much more than, without being detrimental to Dickie or Timmy. It was so much more. He was so much more in depth, and he lived it, and that was me. My wagon was hitched then, but we were still Kyokushin Kai at that stage, because he was travelling to, I think he was looking for a home as well, and he was still going to Stratford, and that was a big part of my learning, because from there I met a guy called Mickey Dinsdale. You may know Mickey Dinsdale. And he got me a job at Smithfield Meat Market. And so that would allow us to go early to work, finish, and then go to Stratford.
Get to the training, yeah.
And there were the people that were there, Brian Fitkin, Stevie Morris, Steve O'Neill. They were all there at that time. I was just a little orange belt, just sat there, and I used to look at them, but I used to listen to everything they were talking about. I just stayed in the background, and that was my learning curve. That was the start of my learning curve. I realised what was attainable from the conversations they had,
Yeah. So what, you still at the sort of age of 18, 19 here?
I was about 18 then. I started with Dickie Woo at 17, and then I suppose after I'd met Ticky, I was about 18, and then I moved up. I think I got my brown belt, my first coup at 19. Within that, before I was 20, was that whole learning curve of being a lower grade, but listening and learning.
How did you find the karate back in them days? To sort of how it's
crazy.
Been a bit watered down today, isn't it?
It would not live in this today and age. There was no mums coming and taking you to the dojo or anything like that. If you had an injury, they used to run across your stomachs. My first major, I went to a Steve O'Neill, what they call them, gashikus, and we was all on this run, and I trod on a piece of glass, and I've still got the scar to this day, and it was pouring with blood. I've got a couple of grants. We'll sort it out when we go back. When we've done a 3-mile run, I was like losing blood by the bucket load by the time we get back, but no one cared. It was nothing like that, and push-ups on your knuckles, and when you sparred, there was no play fighting. It was just they would kick and punch you to their full extent at that stage. It was no playing, especially in Kyokushinkai. It was brutal, really.
I noticed as well, like from the photos and stuff, like in them days there was no padding on the floor. So when you're getting swept and taken down, you're just landing on the hard floor.
There were no pads. The nearest they come to pads was when I moved into when Ticky moved into the Nissan huts, and we had like cardboard on the floor. And if it was a good day, it was smooth, and if it was a bad day, it was rough. And the water used to come off of the walls and seep into the floors, and you either slipped over or you managed to keep on your feet. It's great for your balance, but it wasn't very good for your health. That was the trouble. But we knew no different. We knew no different in them days.
No, that's right. So can you just start to talk us through your sort of karate history as it sort of went through?
Say that again. I'm sorry, Lee.
So you just start to talk us through your sort of karate journey now. Sort of tell us how you sort of progressed and how you went through.
I think that from the start of me working at the meat market, and from the start of going with Ticky, was the start of my karate journey. During that period, a guy come onto the scene called Dominic Valera, and he was the first guy that we'd seen that could, put the kicks up there and control them, not hit you, not hurt you, could play fight. Never seen anything like it, really, to be quite honest, because nothing was play fight about Kyokushinkai. And even Shotokan or Wado, none of it was play fight at that stage, And all of a sudden, there's this guy, Dominic Valera, who can do everything that you'd ever dreamed about and do it with control as well, And that was another, great big moment in my karate life,
He's quite a big name still, isn't he, Dominic Valera?
I think he's about 3 or 4 years older than me. I'm still in touch with him, and he's still teaching. He's teaching full contact. He's still doing courses. He's still kicking Jodan and stretching, and he's fighting 2 at a time, and unbelievable. The man was always, always a one-off, and he always will be,
Yeah. So how did your fighting career start? When did you sort of start getting into the competition side?
That was through Ticky, really, because he was very oriented into competition. So as being at Ticky's karate club, we entered competitions. I I can remember the first one I entered as Kyochin Kai, was run by Steve Arnell, obviously, at Barking Town Hall. A lot of them were at Barking Town Hall, funny enough. And I went in as a green belt or something. I got absolutely mollered. It wasn't, it wasn't a good experience, but it didn't deter me at all. I just realised I wasn't good enough, which made me train even harder.
Yeah.
And I think my first experience of a trophy was I was with Mickey Dinsdale, and he'd just got third in the BKAs, and I was looking at his trophy thinking I would never be able to get that trophy. What a lovely feeling. We're talking about third in the BKAs at that stage, and I really envied him. Later on in my career, I met him in the BKAs and defeated him. Well, if you'd have told me that 2 years before, it would never have entered my head.
Never thought it was possible.
Yeah, he was always one of my heroes as well. He was always, a gentleman. I've met so many good gentlemen in karate, and I've met some animals as well. But it's always the good people, the good karateka that seem to come through with this ethos of you don't have to hurt people to be good at karate. I think it's the people that doubt themselves that do that. The people that they're not sure of their own ability, so they tend to hurt other people to prove themselves.
Yeah, of course. So what sort of age was you working up towards your black belt?
Okay, so my first experience with international karate was the BKK and the BKA formed a team to go over to France, where the Europeans were on. Karate wasn't that organised then, and I think it was the EUK that were running that. Tiki was in there, Michael Dinsdale was in there. I was a brown belt. I think we just managed to get a team. We just managed to get the money to go across, and really that was my first sighting of Dominic Valera. And we booked into a hotel, and there was the whole French team there, all drinking wine, and I was just starting. My eyes were open; they were all laughing. All I could do was look for the toilets. I was trying to find where the toilets were. They were all eating and drinking. They all looked so arrogant, and they were so confident. It was unbelievable to see them. And we were nowhere at that stage then, and. So there was no pads, there was no mats, there was nothing of that nature. I can remember going out in my first round, as I say, a brown belt. There was no weight class. I had a German who was about 6'6". I weighed about 11 stone, something like that, and he just run in and smash me in the face. And
was there weight categories back in them days or not?
No. Nothing.
No weight categories.
No, that never come into about let's have a think, about 5 years into my fighting career. It was all, there were no weight categories. And then there was only, when they brought that in, it was just a trial period, and they had lightweight, medium weight and heavyweight. So if you was nowhere near the medium weight, you went into heavyweight. Obviously some heavyweights were 3 or 4 stone heavier and taller, but that very first competition, that first international competition, there were no weights, there were no pads. I've got a picture of me with the guy, and the guy's up here and I'm down here, and I'm trying to look at anything else but him. It was, and again, the learning curve. I actually won the fight because he smashed me in the face, and he got disqualified, but I couldn't fight on after that. So, but it still never knocked me down. I was quite proud about that he never knocked me down, So
yeah, it's quite a different. I suppose that's why it's changed over the years to weight categories, because we're quite an unfair disadvantage, can't it? We got like a little 9-10 stone guy and a big 20 stone guy.
Of course. It's the best way to go. But then again, as in boxing, you get too many weight categories, don't you?
Yeah, just finding a happy medium.
It started with boxing, and then all of a sudden you got the welterweight, superweights, the heavyweights, and I think you'll find that that's what's happening in karate as well now, the weight categories, But yeah, it is. You've got to have some sort of differential there, definitely.
Hey, can I just ask you, on your list of achievements here, says you fought against the USA team. Was that the team that Benny the Jet Nikitas, was he in that team?
No, that was long before Benny the Jet come over. Again, I'll give you a story about that. That was a great experience as well. But no, we went over to Meadowbank in Scotland, and we fought the Scottish and the Americans and the English team, and we won against the Scots and the Americans. There was no one ultra famous. Oh, there was a guy called Jerry Rome, and he turned to heavyweight kickboxing, and after he appeared, and he was very, very supple, but I can remember he fought Dougie Carroll. Now, if you know Dougie Carroll, he's about 5'6" tall, and Jerry Rome was about 6'6" tall. And it was a complete mismatch, really, because Jerry Rome had hit him with a urine wash at the back and a punch in the face at the front. So it was that non-weight category, which made it a bit unfair, But Dougie still put up a good fight. He was a nutter, and he was a little Jack Russell, He didn't care who was in front of him. But we won that, and we got booed out the stadium, and they threw Coke bottles at us as we was running out. Some good memories of Scotland.
So where did the karate journeys take you? Obviously, because you was representing in England quite a bit. So
yeah, it's taken me everywhere. I've been to Iran, I've been to South Africa. We've done the first tour of South Africa where they were bringing in apartheid, and we took the team was made up of Eugene Codrington and Tyron White, who are obviously black, and so we took them across, and we fought a multinational team, we fought a white team, we fought a coloured team, and we went right the way across Pretoria, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and that was a very good tournament, very good, sort of hands across the water tournament. But we still run into trouble there, because wherever we went, the actual normal people weren't accepting apartheid. They were, they were still very anti-black, and I'd see the other side of that. Where we actually, me and Tyron went to a toilet in the town at one stage, and a guy pulled a gun on us.
Really?
To get out the toilet, we had to get out the toilet. Yeah, he pulled a big gun. But at that stage, I was, a little bit nutty, and I wanted to take him on. Sorry, something's just come up on here. I wanted to take him on, and Tyron sort of pulled me out and said it's not worth the aggravation. But I didn't understand it.
So was that actually in a stadium where you was fighting? Was it that, or
no? This was in Joburg, and we'd been fighting, and we went out for the night afterwards for a meal. They put a meal on for us, and we just went to an ordinary toilet. But we didn't know the rules. Blacks were not allowed into the toilet, and so yeah, that's how silly it was, And I just didn't understand the rules,
Yeah. Well, what's been your favourite country to go and fight against?
To fight against, I think one of my best trips was Japan. I thoroughly enjoyed Japan. I trained there, and I enjoyed the atmosphere there. It wasn't I wasn't at my best fighting, but I think that was one of the most enjoyable tournaments that I fought in. Iran was very good. We because at that stage between any other teams you had this animosity, You know, if you was, well, we was BKA Senshin by that time, but if we, then you didn't get on with Shota Khan, and you didn't get on with Waddo, and then when we went across, if you was England, you didn't get on with Scotland, and you didn't get on with Wales. All that has ended now, which is really good, but there was always that animosity. You wanted to beat them. And Iran was one of the best, where we all come together. Scotland comes second, we come first in the team. We met them in the team, but we were in the same hotel as them, and we become very good friends with them. And it really broke down barriers, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good time for Iran because the Shah was just coming out and the Ayatollah was just going in butts, you know. But that was the political side of it. But for us, it was a great break for the Scottish and the American and the English team.
Yeah. So when did you make the switch going over to from Productionz to Ishinru? Or when did Ishinru get established? What sort of year was that?
I was thinking after the Productionz Championships, we had to fight in Manchester for the BKK team. Tiki fought in that, and there was a Scottish guy that punched him in the face, and Tiki took umbrage to that. Tiki being Tiki, and he gave the guy a couple of whacks and got disqualified, and so they banned him from the whole tournament, and because he was our instructor, or most of our instructors, we said, well, if he's going, we're going. And so, and Steve Arneal at that time, who was in charge of Productionz, said, if you go, you're out of Productionz, so and so. So that may be, I'm not even sure what date that was. That was probably 71 or 72, something of that nature. But, you know, we come away and we decided then we were just training. We joined the BKA, and then Tiki come back off of holiday. He said, I'm going to start Ishinru. This is what it's going to be called. It's all one heart. And we said, whatever you were doing, we're doing. And that was it, you know.
It was the journey of the Ishinru path.
That was, and then Ishinru started its own journey, yeah. You know. Yeah.
So obviously, just a little bit of that went on to be quite a big thing, didn't it, Ishinru? Clubs all over.
It did in the 70s to 80s. It's always been, you know, obviously, it hasn't got the push now that Tiki is, and in this country, he still runs his course, his summer course, and he's got some great instructors. But it will never be the same as it was when Tiki was in charge. You know, he was a man among men, and you followed him. You know, if it had been the Crimea, we'd have followed him into the battle. You know, it was like that. You'd have done anything for him. You know.
Yeah. So what sort of eventually you broke off into your own style, Pete? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's many years later. I went across. So anyway, I come to the end of my competition. I was about 30 then, and I had a girlfriend, and she wanted to get married, and so the two don't mix really. Training for competition and marriage, and I'd done 10 years, and I felt I'd done my bit. I hadn't done my bit. I wish I'd carried on, and you know, but that's the benefit of hindsight, isn't it? But I got married and had a child, and that lasted about 3 years, and then all of a sudden I'm back into karate again. I then got the offer of going over to Jersey to teach over there, so I took that. I probably went off the radar a little bit here, but I was coaching over there. I was coaching their national team, and so I was over there about 5 years, essentially employed over in Jersey. And then when I come back, I think, I'm not sure what year that was, Tiki, he made me a 6-dan. And then I come down to this area to visit a friend, and only on a holiday. I come down to here to holiday, and I liked it. It was nice. It was quiet, and I decided to start my own thing then. There was no animosity. We never argued or anything. We've had our arguments in the years, you know, but that was, Tiki could argue in an empty room, you know that. But as much as I say that, I love him and I followed him anywhere, you know. But he just, I just decided to go my own way, and I still stay in touch. I still go out to Thailand to see him. I still consider him my sensei. And if he, in fact, I'm only on Facebook because he told me to go on Facebook. You know, you've got to go on Facebook. So I went on Facebook, and it was the best thing I'd done because I got back in touch with all the people. It was amazing how many people come through over that time, you know.
Can I just ask you a little bit about your teaching side of the karate? So when did you become an instructor and go down that path?
Okay, that's quite a good question, actually. But so we were talking about the Kyokushinkai side of it. So when I went to Tiki's Club, and I still lived in Basildon, so I was travelling backwards and forward from Basildon. It may not seem a long way now, but when you're doing it twice a week, it's quite a long way. And there was no club in Basildon, so I decided to reopen the club that I started at. Right. So the Langdon Club, the hall was still there, and I thought, well, there was the people who didn't come to Tiki's Club first. So I thought, well, I'll open that club. So I from there, it's quite funny. So the club that I didn't want to go in and train at, I'm now opening the club as an instructor. I was a brown belt as well. Yeah, that's right. So, you know, the fate has hit me between the eyes. And I opened, I called it Basildon, but it was Langdon, Ishinru, and went in there from fourth dan until I first queue until about third and fourth dan, until I went across to Jersey. So, you know, and that was a very successful club, very good club. Turned out some good students, Stevie Quinn, Gordon Kenny, the Martin twins. There were some great fighters come out there, you know. Yeah.
So how did that lead on with your teaching from there? How did you find becoming from a fighter to a coach? Did you like the sort of change, or do you find it difficult?
Well, no. As I say, you know, I was led by example. That's what Tiki was. I wasn't so much a coach as an instructor, and I was instructing karate, still fighting at that stage. You know, just really, I thought at that stage to sort of lead the troops as Tiki did with us. You know, I'd done exactly what he'd done. I opened the club. My students were there. I wanted them to fight in competition, so I went and fought in competition, and they followed on accordingly. I didn't. There was no transition between student to instructor to coach. It was just a natural flow of water, really. You know, it just flowed in. You know, and my knowledge, everything that I'd done in karate, i.e. as an instructor, as a coach, as a student, has all been through Tiki. I owe him everything that I am. You know, I know, I'll cover this subject. I know people say, oh, you was under Tiki. I've heard it so many times, you was under Tiki's flag and that stopped you from blossoming. No, it didn't. I learned everything from him, you know, and I owe him everything that I ever done or had, you know. I've been all around the world. I've earned money. I've earned prestige. I know people. And if I hadn't have gone the route that I'd gone, I probably wouldn't have known any of that.
Yeah. If you're just going off the bandwagon a little bit, have you ever had to use the karate in an outside situation, or does it come in handy?
You had to ask. Yeah, but again, as brown belt, I started on the and I suppose at that stage it's all there experimental. I don't feel that I was dormant material because I was 5'11", 5'10" and a half, 5'11", weighed about 11 and a half stone at that time. So I become a very good talker. So I become a front man as such. You know, I would normally front the actual doorman rather than be the doorman. Okay, I would just instruct them what to do, and I would put people on the door. When I went across to, I won't jump, I would say, I started at the Lacy Lady. Do you remember the Lacy Lady?
No, I don't remember that one.
They were weekly taverns, and I started them as brown belt. Then a guy opened up a club in Basel and asked me if I would put the door on there, and I put the door on there. And when I went across to Jersey, I had about 3 clubs that I put the door on. I used to travel around and just make sure everything was okay. In answer to your first question, which I'm trying to be evasive, yes, I've had to, unfortunately. And I have learned my lesson over the years that you can talk yourself out of, but sometimes you get in a situation with people that you cannot step away from,
I suppose, especially in that environment where they're drunk and no matter what you say, they don't want to listen.
They don't want to listen. That's exactly right. They become Superman. They have a few drinks and they become Superman. It's funny, the offshoot of that is I don't really go out on New Year's Eve anymore. I used to enjoy New Year's Eve very much, and I used to earn a lot of money New Year's Eve, but it was always a trouble night. So when when New Year's Eve comes around now, I often stay in because I can't be bothered with all the trouble that it associates with, And I'm old enough not to get in trouble now, but unfortunately, when you leave that line of business, you carry it with you for years. A glass smashes and you sit with your back to the wall, and it's stupid things, but it's just what happens when you've been doing it for a considerable number of years.
Yeah. So what situation did you find yourself where karate came in useful in that side of it?
All right. I would imagine we were all out of statutory limits now anyway, so I couldn't get arrested for any of them. But and in fact, I will relate one that we were all in. Tiki, myself, Dougie Carroll. We were travelling. This wasn't on the door. We were travelling to Manchester to have a training session. It was a squad training session, and we got on a train that was full of Man United supporters going down to, and there were hundreds of thousands of them. And we were sitting in a carriage, and they come through with their cup of coffee, and they kicked someone's leg, not one of us, but a little kid kicked his legs away and threw coffee over. It was a silly incident, and Tiki see it, and as the guy, they were singing "We Will Not Be Moved," and Tiki said, "I'll fucking move you," and he smacked the guy out of the air, and he went down, and they got up and run. But I knew from experience then that it wasn't going to end there. So we're at the end of the carriage, and I said, it's not going to stop. They're going to come through. So I looked like this down the carriage, and there are hundreds of them coming down, all with their scarves and everything of this nature. So we met them in between carriages. There was 5 of us, and there were hundreds of them. But they had to come through the door one at a time, didn't they? They forgot about that. Tiki was in the middle. The guy's got a bottle like this going to hit Tiki. He's got a scarf around and Tiki just pulled him through on the scarf. He's run onto my fist, run onto Will Werner's kick. He went down. And they just tried to come through, but they had to come through one at a time. And we controlled the situation very well until we got into Manchester Station, and then we just got off the train and police ran on and arrested everybody. But not one of us were hurt. It was a great, it was a great result. We did get to the training session. We were completely covered in claret, but
you'd already had the training before you got there.
That's right. That's right. There was Terry O'Neill and Billy Higgins, and they were just looking at us like, what the fuck's happened? But, there's been a number of incidents like that. There has been a number of incidents. I could relate loads of them to you, but you'd have to be specific to what you want.
So Pete, can you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, like with your own club and your own sort of journey?
Yeah, basically I'm retired now. I don't know if your viewers know, but I'm a ninth dan now, and people say to me, how do you get to ninth dan? And my stock in trade answer is you have to reach 70 at least. You have to have both your hips replaced, and you have to have diabetes. So unless you got all of them, you cannot be a ninth dan, So but everybody that I know from the past tournament experience, they've all got hip problems, and you know, joint problems, and they've all got something wrong with them. So I'm personally, I'm in semi-retirement. I don't work. I quite like it. You know, I can get up when I want. I can go out when I want. But I still run my own clubs here. I enjoy teaching as much as I enjoyed teaching, and probably more now than when I was younger. I don't have the ability to demonstrate as I used to, but I still have the mentality, and I can get the message across. I've got some great black belts that train with me, and they're still with me, and some of them are 40, 50 years of age, and it means a lot, you know. And I look forward to my Mondays. My Mondays is when I see, you know, my class, and I look forward to that. I'll never lose it, unfortunately. I say unfortunately, it's not unfortunate. It's good for me. It keeps me going, really. You know,
yes.
I'd probably be playing darts or something of that nature. You know?
So, if you could go back in time, would you change your journey of your karate at all?
I've had a brilliant.
Have you enjoyed it all the way through?
Yeah. What would I want to do? You know, as I say, it's earned me money. It's got me around the world. I've even acted in a few things. When I was in Jersey, I was in Bergerac, and you know.
Oh, really?
yeah. I was Diamond Lil's minder. Right. And that's quite a funny story, because I had about 4 lines to say, and I practiced them. I told everybody I was in it, and then they cut the whole scene out, and I was never in it. So I looked a right plum. But, you know. But I was there. You know. I'd like to have done more in that line, the acting line. It was great. But as I say, you know, my journey has always been, since competition, teaching karate, and that's the pleasure I get. I do get a lot of pleasure out of it, you know. Okay,
Peter, we're starting to wind it up there. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Really appreciate everything. Is there anywhere where people, the viewers, can find you, or any web pages you've got?
I have a website, which is www.senshinryu.com. Something or other. If they just tap in Senshinryu, they'll find it. If they go on my page, they'll see my number on there. My number's on there. I've had the same number for the last, I don't know, 30 years, because I can't get my head around numbers. I forget them, so I have to keep the same number. So I'm always obtainable, and I'm sure if anybody wants me, they can get me through you anyway.
Lovely. Thank you ever so much, Peter. Appreciate your time and your story. Thanks for coming.
It's lovely to meet you again, Lee.
Thank you, Peter.
Soon, eh?
Cheers, mate. Good luck.
Bye-bye. Good luck. Thank you very much.